Okay, folks, are we all ready to go? I'm assuming the raised hands do not indicate people actually have questions at this point. You're just trying to prove that you're good boys and girls and you figured it out. That's good. Okay, well, then let's go ahead and get started. Our first speaker is Julia DeMarines. Damn it, I got it wrong. DeMarines, right?
DeMarines, close enough. It's fine.
All right. Okay, I got the accent wrong. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, she's going to talk to us about the morality of interstellar messaging. Take it away.
Okay, I can share it says host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Okay, let's see.
I'm happy to be guinea pig.
Multiple participants. Okay. You should be good now.
Okay, I'm gonna start my little 5-minute. Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks to the organizers especially for hosting this in these unprecedented times. It's really great to be amongst you all. Speaking to you from Oakland, California. It's just out after 6 a.m. So if I stumble, that is because I am definitely not a morning person. But again, I just mentioned I'm grateful to be here, and I want to say I'm grateful for this collaboration between Dr. Chelsea Jaramillo and myself. Chelsea is from Spring Hill College, a professor in philosophy there, and I'm a grad student at UC Berkeley with the Berkeley SETI Research Center, as well as Blue Marble Space. And of course, I can't advance. Here we go. So kind of the main discussion here is the discussion between passive SETI and active SETI. And we want to discuss the risk involved in both SETI, METI, and other radio transmissions not intended for communication, and highlight the asymmetries in intent and risk. So let's just kind of get into it. AntiMedi, you probably, if you're familiar with the conversation between AntiMediast and pro-Mediast, there is a risk of harm. There's a non-zero risk that communication could bring catastrophic events. However, pro-Mediasts say there might be you might be missing out on benefits. And I argue that perhaps adorableness could be one of them, or some climate change saving event. I wanted to highlight that not all signals that we emit are equal. So you might have heard, yeah, we're already continuing to kind of blast the universe with our presence, but that's not necessarily true. So there's a difference between, say, our broadband TV carriers and radio waves that we normally use that don't get out very far. There's this pesky thing called the inverse square law, where things dissipate exponentially as you get away. So we'll talk a little bit more in just a minute about this very bright signal called the Arecibo Radar. Rest in peace, Arecibo. So this is just something that I'd like to highlight. So as some of you probably know, that there's METI International, whose goal is to elicit a response by sending out messages. So we will argue that active and passive searches are not ethically identical, and it depends on how the search was carried out. So let's discuss a little bit about risk and intention. So SETI's intent is to discover life, and it gives us the opportunity to assess the risk before engaging. And successful passive searches do not guarantee the detection of our presence in the way that successful active searches do. So a successful active search would be getting a response. And this inhibits our ability to assess risk before engaging. So I mentioned we'll talk briefly about the Arecibo radar that pings nearby asteroids, so we know what's in our planetary neighborhood, so we don't get clobbered like the dinosaurs. So planetary radar it's a very, very bright signal. And it's addressing the potential harm of an asteroid collision, whereas METI is not mitigating any potential threat, and METI's signals are targeted, whereas planetary radar it's not targeting any exoplanet. So some things to consider for the road ahead. Ethicists maintain that humanity is generally getting more moral, and there's more moral progress. We're moving away from things like slavery, genocide, colonialism, and we are moving away from hierarchies and moving towards things like inclusion, equity, increasing welfare, and etc. So we argue that this might be good to consider with this trend should also be considered in messaging practices, such as oversight and regulation, more inclusive debate before messaging occurs. And to quote, oops, got ahead of myself. To quote Jason T. Wright, this preserves our options in the future, and regulations on MEDI can be reserved, but signals in space cannot be taken back. So I think I nailed the time here. But if consensus and regulations are not achievable right now, there's no policy saying we can't send messages out. Perhaps a good alternative would be to have conversations like this involving humanists, social scientists, astrobiologists, the whole gamut. And we should work for careful deliberation and have debate and oversight to achieve a consensus one day. Because after all, who speaks for Earth? And if you'd like to reach out further, please get in touch. I had her, Dr. Haramiya's email wrong on my original presentation on YouTube, so this is the correct one. And I think that's enough for me. Should I stop sharing or should I leave this up?
I think you should stop sharing because it makes it a whole lot easier to see everybody going on. So first of all, Chelsea, that was a good start for us. You did a good job of getting the time right and getting the summary right. So everybody should follow in your footsteps. Now, going through the people who've raised their hands, it looks to me like Sabine was first. So unless you forgot to put your hand down from before. Okay, how about Ted? Did you forget to put your hand down from before, Ted? Okay.
Yes, I forgot to put it down, but I do have a good a question here.
Okay.
If morality in general is growing, is Berkeley growing faster than Washington?
Sure.
The idea is not that
I need to answer that.
it's the moral progress is we're getting closer, or moral progress is happening, not that morality itself is growing. But I get the joke.
As a Cal alumnus, I can tell you that they think that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Abhik, do you want to ask a question?
Not really. I think I forgot to put down my hand. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
let's see. I know that Sherry raised her hand after the talk. So Sherry, you go ahead.
But now I raised my hand. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to know what about the Arecibo telescope? Do you have any information if it will rebuild or not?
Oh, good question. So as far as I'm aware, yeah, I'm sure you all heard the tragedy that Arecibo is no longer with us. But I know that there has been some petitions trying to encourage NSF funding to rebuild. I don't know the status as of now. So hopefully we can in the future, because that's a huge asset to many aspects of science and for Puerto Rico. Yeah.
May I ask a second question?
Sure.
Yeah. The golden disk were sent by the Voyager. You mentioned this in your presentation, in your long version. Do you have some idea if it is planned to send another disk or something like something similar into space with information about us?
Great question. I do not know. What I do know is, and I might invite folks who might work at NASA or another like ESA or what have you to answer to this. But I do know that when we do launch things like the latest Mars rover, Perseverance, I believe that they always have some sort of I don't know if it's like a crowdsource, like enter your name to go on Mars, and they'll put it on a little like disc or something. So in terms of like a plaque or a record, I do not know if things like that are being planned for the future. But I do know that institutions like NASA, they do encourage participation by like encouraging you to like sign your name on a digital name on the rover or something like that. So there's things like that that I'm aware of. But if anyone else knows of others, I invite you to share that with us.
Okay, Sherry. Where'd Sherry go? There she is. You're muted, Sherry. There you go.
There we go. It's not like I've been doing this for 9 months or anything. So the thing that I found really interesting about, that I always find interesting about these presentations, and about yours in particular, which I enjoyed your presentation very much on YouTube, thank you, is that the messaging always is discussed in terms of risk and not messaging in terms of lack of benefit. And I get that distinction, but I'm wondering about risks of not messaging it. I was thinking last night watching your video that it reminds me of the people in my neighborhood who walk their dogs at night dressed in black, like on the sides of the streets, which seems very dangerous to me. And I wonder if there is anything, since we don't know the context, right, that not speaking might be dangerous in some way. And the other thing that I think about a lot is the danger of not messaging if in fact we really need help and we're not asking for it. And I like the idea of thinking carefully about, you know, that we're doing this at our grandchildren, basically. And just like we can't take a message back, we can't hurry up and send one either if it turned out that, oh my God, we really need help, which I don't know if they would help us or not, but we don't know anything about any of this, right? So I think I'm wondering what your response is to those kind of concerns, the risk of not messaging.
Yeah, great question. And I also might invite Dr. Chelsea Haramia to chime in here. But yeah, so the risk of not messaging, that's a great question. But I might follow up with what are like global existential risks that we can't, as humans, maybe if perhaps we're not able to achieve a solution, then I don't know. I would just question the timing. Why now, before sending out a SOS? But I want to see if Chelsea maybe.
Well, I'll also just add, just for kind of clarification, the risk of lost benefit did actually show up in the talk, and even in the summary there with Baby Yoda, right? Like lost adorableness is the lost benefit. But like, a potential discovery of how to like successfully combat climate change or stop a super volcano or something, right? Like that is actually part of this argument, and this kind of flip side of like, there's a cohort that says, what about all this risk? And then there's the flip side that says that, hey, what about the risk of lost benefit? And then the kind of take home point is that neither of those, you don't get to like assign any higher or lower probabilities to either kind of set of concerns. And so they're all sort of important in an equal sense.
Okay, Neil.
Thanks. I'm sorry, you're getting me right when they're blowing leaves right behind my office. Sorry for that loud noise. In economics, there's the phenomenon of discounting, right? The farther into the future a harm or benefit is, the less it counts. It seems to me that's really relevant in this discussion because any information we get in response to METI, if it's sent at the speed of light, is going to get here a lot sooner than an alien spacecraft or some other actual threat, right? So shouldn't we be, sorry, it's really loud, shouldn't we be favoring, sorry about this, they're right behind me. Shouldn't we be favoring the benefits of METI over the potential harms just because of that discounting factor?
I just might echo again, kind of just what Chelsea just mentioned, is that you can't really assess you can't really stack the benefits against the harms and say, oh, the benefits will automatically outweigh the harms. You just can't do that. But I hear what you're saying, and sorry, it's like it's a little early for me, so forgive me if my gears are cranking a little bit slowly. But I would argue that a non-zero risk could have catastrophic harm on the entire species. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of like where I might leave that, but I would see if Chelsea wanted to chime in with anything else.
I'm just actually not sure I understand the.
I'm
the
sorry.
question. Could you rephrase it?
They really were screaming right behind my door. A message we send out, if it gets a response, that response in terms of a signal will be at the speed of light, whereas something that could actually threaten our planet would not be traveling at the speed of light, right? It would have to be traveling vastly slower than that. Doesn't that push much, much farther into the future the potential harms of METI and have, relatively speaking, the benefits, if there are any, much closer? I mean, how
Okay, good, yeah.
could there be from getting a message from another civilization, right? Whereas
so here's a way of maybe responding to that. So the debate was presented as one between like active messaging, METI, and then like passive messaging or typical SETI projects. And so typical SETI projects aren't looking for, I mean, I guess in general they are, but like the specific, what they're looking for specifically is what would be traveling at the speed of light, like some message to be found, right? And so it seems that if we're comparing the risks of active versus passive messaging, there's both are able to kind of like target and reap the benefits of like speed of light transmissions. And so that doesn't kind of give us reason to favor one over the other, I don't think.
okay.
All right, Eric.
Yes, thanks for a nice presentation. I have one question. You mentioned in your presentation the precautionary principle, and you said something like it means that you should not pursue a course of action that can cause significant harm. I didn't really recognize that formulation. Of course, there is no consensus about the precautionary principle, but I was thinking, like everything can cause significant harm. It's just some can cause significant harm with high probability and some with very, very low probability, but there's no such thing like a zero probability. But many formulations of the precautionary principle says something like, if we're dealing with something very important, like human health or the environment, then we shouldn't wait for the same scientific certainty as in other cases before we do something about it. What do you think of that formulation? It's, I think, more common and a bit more reasonable. Is that something you could use?
We actually do away with the precautionary principle in the paper. We find it kind of just unhelpful entirely, and it's because of the fact that with this endeavor, it's not that we're lacking certainty like we are with things like health or medicine or those kinds of kind of research or projects. It's that there's a complete uncertainty about all the possible outcomes because it's all pure speculation. Like the outcomes are completely opaque to us, which they're not with these other kind of projects that the precautionary principle would apply to. And this is why Julia brought up we're deciding in the dark. And so the idea is that the precautionary principle, maybe even however you want to formulate it, isn't really going to provide some good justification to not message, right? And what the focus of the talk was is that there's this other kind of ethical concern, not the risk of the harmful outcome or beneficial outcome, but that there's this removal of the opportunity to evaluate the target of the messaging with active or MEDI projects, whereas there's not that guarantee of that lost opportunity with passive searches. And so in fact, the precautionary principle, it was brought up to say this actually isn't really helpful in this context, in this debate.
Okay, so sadly, we're going to have to stop it there.